The smell of disinfectant mixed with the faint aroma of coffee filled the adoption center in downtown Miami. The air conditioner hummed softly above the rows of blue plastic chairs, where Isabella Cruz sat clutching a folder to her chest. Her hands were trembling slightly, though she tried to hide it beneath the crisp sleeve of her white blouse. Michael was beside her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor tiles as if they might rearrange themselves into an answer. He had barely spoken all morning. Isabella tried to fill the silence with nervous smiles and half-hearted conversation about the weather, about the ocean breeze outside, about anything that could keep her from shaking. 2 more hours, she whispered, her voice uncertain yet full of hope. We're finally going to meet her. Michael nodded without looking up. His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he was simply nervous, like her. After all, they had been through so much, the endless paperwork, the interviews, the waiting lists, the psychological assessments. 2 years of their lives wrapped around one dream. But something about his silence felt heavier than usual. Isabella turned to him, her dark hair brushing against her shoulder. "Michael," she said gently, "are you all right?" He looked up then, and for a second, she almost wished he hadn't. There was no warmth in his eyes, only distance, a hollow space where love used to live. "I don't want kids with you," he said quietly. The words didn't land at first. They drifted between them like smoke, twisting and fading before they could fully burn. Isabella blinked, waiting for him to laugh, to correct himself, to say anything else that would undo what she just heard. But Michael didn't speak again. He simply sat back in the chair, his gaze fixed on the glass door across the room. Her heartbeat filled the silence. She wanted to ask why, to scream, to stand up and walk away. Yet all she could do is stare at the folder in her lap, the one with the photograph of a baby girl inside, a baby she already called her daughter in her heart. Outside the window, Miami glowed under the morning sun. Cars honked, people laughed, and the world moved on as if nothing had shattered. Inside that room, everything stopped. Isabella took a slow breath and swallowed the tears pressing at her throat. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "We're meeting her today, Michael," she said softly. "You can't say something like that now." Michael didn't reply. He only rubbed his face with both hands, as though trying to erase himself from the moment. And as the clock on the wall ticked closer to the hour that was supposed to change their lives, Isabella realized that it already had. The hum of the car engine filled the silence as Isabella stared out through the windshield. The streets of Miami were alive with colors, but everything looked muted to her now. The sunlight reflected on the bonnet like fragments of something that used to be whole. Michael drove, without saying a word. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel. She held her folder again, the edges now bent from her grip. Inside it, the photo of the baby girl smiled back, unaware that her entire future hung on a few sentences spoken in a waiting room. When the light turned red, Isabella dared to look at Michael. His face was calm, almost detached. That frightened her more than anger would have. "Was it something I did?" she asked, her voice small, almost swallowed by the hum of the air conditioning. He didn't turn his head. "It's not you," he said. "It's me. I thought I could do this. I thought I wanted this." She felt her throat tighten. "But we've been through everything together. The interviews, the visits, the waiting. You said you were ready." "I said I wanted to make you happy," he replied. "I didn't realize that would mean losing myself." The traffic light changed to green, and he pressed the accelerator too hard. The car lurched forward. Isabella gripped her seatbelt and bit back the words that wanted to escape. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Every mile between them felt like a wall being built, brick by invisible brick. When they reached the house, the little white home they had painted together last summer, Isabella stepped out and looked at the porch swing Michael had built. It moved slightly in the breeze, empty and waiting. She walked inside without looking back. That night, Isabella sat alone in the living room. The air smelt faintly of lavender candles and the sea salt that drifted through the open window. She took the photograph from the folder and placed it on her lap. The baby's name was printed neatly on the paper below, Amelia Grace, 8 months old. Her eyes were wide and curious, her cheeks full and soft. Isabella traced the outline of the picture with her finger. She felt the tears finally fall, slow and quiet. From the other room, she could hear Michael's footsteps pacing. The creak of the wooden floorboards marked his restlessness. "Michael," she said after a while, not looking up, "we've waited 2 years. I can't just walk away from her now." He stopped at the doorway. The dim light cast a shadow across the floor. "You don't even know her," he said. "I don't need to," Isabella whispered. "I already love her." Michael's sigh was deep and weary. "You're chasing a dream that doesn't belong to us anymore." Then he turned away, leaving her with the sound of the door closing softly behind him. The photograph remained on her lap, glowing faintly in the warm lamplight, a reminder of a promise she wasn't ready to break. Morning arrived with a pale light and the ringing of Isabella's phone. She blinked against the brightness and saw the caller ID. Adoption Center, Miami. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she answered. "Mrs. Cruz," said the voice on the line, cheerful and professional. "We're so excited for today. Are you still coming?" Her heart thudded painfully. She looked towards the empty side of the bed where Michael had slept. The sheets were still ruffled, but the space was cold. "Yes," she said finally, her voice firm despite the tremor beneath it. "I'll be there." After hanging up, she sat for a long moment, breathing deeply. She looked at herself in the mirror. Tired eyes, a face pale with worry, yet something new stirred inside her. A resolve. She dressed simply, tied her hair, and took the folder once more. As she walked out to the car, she noticed Michael's vehicle missing from the driveway. The silence around her was almost peaceful. She started the engine. For the first time in days, she felt like she knew exactly where she was going. The adoption center looked different without him. Quieter. The receptionist greeted her warmly and led her to a small room with pale yellow walls. A single stuffed rabbit sat on a table in the corner. "Wait here," the woman said kindly. "They'll bring her in shortly." Isabella nodded and sat down. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She stared at the small rabbit, wondering if she should smile when the baby arrived, or if she would cry. Maybe both. Time moved slowly. The ticking clock above her head felt louder with every second. And then, a soft knock on the door. A nurse stepped in, holding a bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. Her voice was gentle. "Isabella, this is Amelia." The world fell away. When Isabella reached out and took the child in her arms, she felt warmth spread through her chest, a kind of peace she had never known. Amelia's small fingers curled around hers, and Isabella's breath caught. She whispered, "Hello, my darling." At that moment, nothing else mattered. Not Michael, not the fear, not the uncertainty. Only this heartbeat, this fragile connection that already felt eternal. When Isabella returned home with Amelia, the house felt too big. Every room echoed. She walked through the doorway, carrying the baby close to her chest. The living room still had Michael's shoes near the door. His jacket hung on the back of the chair. But his presence was gone. She laid Amelia gently in a small crib by the window, the one they had assembled together weeks ago. The sight of it made her chest tighten, yet the baby's soft breathing calmed her. That night, Isabella sat awake watching the tiny rise and fall of Amelia's chest. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the ocean. She whispered into the dark, "It's just us now." Amelia stirred, as if she had heard. For the first time, Isabella didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. 3 days passed before Michael came back. Isabella was feeding Amelia when she heard the key turn in the lock. He stepped inside slowly, looking tired, his eyes hollow. The sight of the baby in Isabella's arms froze him. "You went through with it," he said. She nodded. "I did." He rubbed his forehead. "I don't know how to be part of this." "You don't have to," Isabella said quietly. "But she deserves love, and I have enough for both of us." Michael looked at her then, really looked. The strength in her voice, the way she held the baby, the gentleness that had replaced her tears. Something shifted in his expression. Not regret, not yet, but something close to it. Amelia's cries echoed through the small house. Isabella walked the floor back and forth, rocking her in her arms. Outside, rain poured against the windows, filling the silence with rhythm. She hadn't slept properly in days, but she didn't mind. Each cry, each tiny sigh, each breath reminded her she wasn't alone anymore. At one point, she glanced towards the door. Michael stood there, uncertain. "Do you need help?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then nodded. He stepped forward, holding Amelia for the first time. His hands trembled slightly. The baby's cries softened, then stopped. Isabella watched him closely. In that quiet moment, something fragile began to mend between them. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains. The storm had passed. Isabella woke to find Michael sitting in the chair beside the crib, Amelia asleep on his chest. He looked up at her, his eyes red but softer now. "She's beautiful," he said. "She is," Isabella whispered. They sat in silence for a long time, the kind that didn't need words. Then Michael spoke, barely audible. "I was afraid. Not of her, but of not being enough. You've always been stronger than me." Isabella smiled faintly. "You don't have to be strong. Just be here." He nodded slowly. For the first time, he seemed to believe he could be. Weeks later, they stood together on the shore. The Miami sun stretched golden over the waves. Amelia giggled in Isabella's arms as the wind brushed her hair. Michael stood beside them, his hand resting gently on the baby's blanket. He said nothing, but his eyes held quiet apology. Isabella closed her eyes, breathing in the salt air. The hurt hadn't disappeared, but it had changed shape, softer, lighter. They walked along the sand, the footprints of 3 souls trailing behind them. The sea whispered in its endless rhythm, carrying away the last of the silence that once separated them. And in that moment, under the vast Miami sky, Isabella knew that family wasn't something you were given. It was something you chose, again and again, no matter how much it cost.